Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening practice topic name is Why Idioms Make English Hard. Tips to understand them faster. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing a special deep dive that's really tailored for you, the language adventurer, tackling one of English's most colorful but, persistently perplexing features, idioms.
It is such a steep climb, isn't it? As an advanced learner, you've done the hard work, you've mastered the grammar, you know thousands of words, but then a native speaker just casually says something like, oh, they really let the cat out of the bag on that one.
And suddenly you're lost.
You're completely lost. You're left scrambling. These expressions, they're not just vocabulary, they're more like secret linguistic handshakes. They can really make or break fluency.
Absolutely. And that feeling of just missing the cultural inside joke, it can be totally debilitating. We know that feeling of hitting an idiom and thinking, I know every single word in this sentence, but the meaning is just, it's gone. So our specific mission today is to cut through that confusion. We're diving deep into the question, why idioms make English hard? And what are some tips to understand them faster?
And our goal isn't just to, list off a bunch of definitions. We want to give you practical, actionable strategies. We want to get you past that feeling that tackling these phrases is a tough nut to crack.
Right. Another idiom right there.
Exactly. Something difficult to solve. And instead, we want to give you the tools you need to get on the ball with true fluency.
Which means becoming what? Highly competent and alert?
Yes, alert to all the little nuances of native speech.
Okay, so before we really dissect the 5 core reasons these phrases create such a massive hurdle for even advanced learners, we have to lay a foundation. What is an idiom, linguistically speaking? Because the sheer number of them is, frankly, terrifying. We're talking about estimates suggesting English has over 25,000 idioms.
25,000? I mean, that number alone is enough to send any learner down in the dumps.
There's another one.
Feeling sad and unmotivated. But if we can put some structure to that chaos, it becomes manageable. We have to start with a fundamental definition and, their function.
Let's do it. Let's start with the basics. We know an idiom is more than just slang or, a quirky saying. So what's the precise definition that separates it from, say, a common metaphor?
Okay, so the precise definition is this. An idiom is a phrase where the meaning is not compositional, meaning you can't get the meaning from the literal definitions of the individual words.
You can't just add them up.
You can't add them up. If you analyze it word by word, you are going to fail to get the message. It's the figurative sense of the entire phrase that carries the true meaning. That lack of transparency, that's its defining feature.
And that non-literal meaning is the critical piece that just throws learners completely off track. Let's take that classic, if a bit macabre, example. Kick the bucket. Why is that the perfect illustration of an idiom?
It's perfect because the literal image, kicking a wooden pail with your foot, is completely and utterly disconnected from the real meaning, which is, of course, to die.
Right.
The fact that the words themselves are so mundane, so simple, makes that figurative leap that much bigger. And what's really fascinating here, and what makes idioms so complex, is all the historical baggage they carry.
Give us the story on that one. We hear so many different theories about where kick the bucket comes from.
It is a wonderfully debated piece of, let's call it linguistic archaeology. One of the strongest theories, though it's still disputed, links it back to methods of execution or slaughter in the Middle Ages.
Wow, okay.
The idea is that an animal, or in some of the more gruesome tales, a person, would be standing on an inverted bucket. Kicking it away would, end their life.
So whether that's exactly true or not, the phrase itself carries that historical echo.
It does, an echo of a sudden final action. You are essentially having to solve a historical or a cultural puzzle just to understand a simple phrase about death.
That immediately shows you're dealing with layers of culture, not just a vocabulary list you can memorize. But it's really important to give our listeners context here. This isn't just an English problem.
Oh, absolutely not. Every single natural language on Earth uses them. And understanding that can help learners realize this struggle is just, it's part of achieving native-like fluency anywhere.
So what are some examples?
Well, think about Spanish. They use the phrase dar en el clavo. Literally, that's to hit the nail. But if you have idiomatic mastery, you know they mean to be exactly right, which is almost identical to our English idiom, hit the nail on the head.
Or that romantic French one, which I find so evocative. Avoir un coup de foudre.
Yes.
Literally, to have a lightning strike. You don't call the Weather Bureau, you understand instantly they mean love at first sight. So these parallels show that the purpose of the idiom goes beyond any single language.
And that purpose is key. It's about efficiency and creating a shared mental model. Why do native speakers use them all the time? Because they're shortcuts. They add color, they add humor, and most importantly, they create instantaneous communication. Instead of having to say, I am feeling extremely distressed, disorganized, and overwhelmed due to excessive pressure from my job, you just say,
I'm under the pump.
I'm under the pump, and the other person gets it instantly.
That's a huge cognitive saving for the speaker. But let's dig into why that efficiency is so important. It's more than just sounding punchy, right? What cognitive function does an idiom serve that simple descriptive language just lacks?
It really gets into shared mental model theory. When I say, I'm under the pump, you, as a native speaker, you don't process the words pump and under separately. Your brain just instantly accesses a single mental chunk that represents stress and pressure.
Okay, so it's like one unit of meaning.
One single unit. And activating that shared singular mental model is much, much faster than processing a whole string of descriptive adjectives. It lets a conversation move quicker and with a richer emotional context. But that efficiency, as our analysis points out, is a real double-edged sword for anyone who hasn't acquired that shared model yet.
It's like a closed loop until you find the key to get in. And the sheer scope of this closed loop is daunting. We mentioned that estimate of over 25,000 idioms in English. When you're faced with that kind of volume, how do you even begin to organize it?
You have to categorize. You absolutely cannot approach this massive list as one single monolithic block. Idioms tend to cluster around specific themes or concepts.
Like animals or food.
Exactly. Recognizing these thematic categories, animals, food, weather, sports, it provides a foundational framework. And we'll dive deep into those categories in Section 3 because organization is the very first step in fighting that feeling of being overwhelmed. If we can group them into, say, 5 manageable buckets, those 25,000 phrases stop feeling like random noise and start to feel like structured language.
And structure is what we crave as learners.
Yeah.
But before we get to the solution, let's really confront the problem head-on and dissect the reasons why idioms are so often cited as English's biggest hurdle to getting to that true native-like level of fluency.
All right, let's unpack these linguistic, cognitive, and cultural stumbling blocks. This is where we show why just knowing how to translate isn't going to be enough.
Okay, so hurdle number 1, defying literal logic. In your analysis, what is it about this that is so paralyzing for a learner?
It's what I'd call a betrayal of foundational linguistic trust.
Ooh, I like that.
Idioms are rule breakers. Think about it. When you spend months or even years internalizing the mechanics of a language, the grammar, the syntax, the vocabulary, you build an expectation that those structures will be reliable.
That the parts will add up to the whole.
Exactly. And idioms violate that expectation completely. They require you to discard the individual meanings of the words you just worked so hard to master.
So the core challenge is that mandatory, non-negotiable cognitive shift. You have to move from a direct analytical translation to a more contextual, intuitive understanding.
Precisely. And the results of trying a direct translation are often, comical, if not disastrous. Let's go back to break a leg. An advanced learner knows the word break means to shatter and leg is a limb. Yet they have to force their brain to accept that the combined phrase actually means good luck. This non-literal nature demands a complete disregard for the word's definitions. The phrase only survives because of its cultural context, possibly related to actors breaking the curtain line during a performance.
And if you try to take that literal structure and just plug it into another language, the result is almost always pure nonsense. It makes that translation trap painfully clear.
That translation trap is a profound barrier. We looked at a Russian idiom, hang noodles on one's ears.
Hang noodles on one's ears, okay.
Right. It means to deceive someone. An English learner hearing that translates hang noodles, ears, they are entirely lost. And the reverse is true. Our equivalent, pull the wool over someone's eyes, is just as opaque if you don't share the cultural reference point.
Right.
The meaning is basically arbitrary until you are inducted into that specific cultural knowledge.
So the first and most fundamental barrier is just getting over the expectation that the sum of the parts will equal the whole. With idioms, the sum is something brand new and often completely counterintuitive.
And that leads directly into the second major hurdle, which is that idioms are linguistic time capsules. They carry all this cultural and historical baggage references to history, religion, mythology, ancient customs that just may not exist in the learner's frame of reference.
Okay, let's expand on that idea with an example. Spill the beans. We know it means revealing a secret, but let's paint a picture of why a learner needs that backstory to really get it.
Okay, so imagine ancient Greece. Democratic voting sometimes involved using beans. White beans for yes, black or colored beans for no.
Right.
These were cast into a jar. Now, if that jar was accidentally or prematurely knocked over, the beans would spill, revealing the votes before the count was officially done.
So it revealed a secret result.
Exactly. That act, revealing the result prematurely, becomes the anchor for the idiom. Without that vivid cultural context, the image of ancient democracy hinging on legumes, the phrase is just baffling. It's just food.
That immediately connects the idiom to a very specific moment in Western civilization. And these touchstones, they don't just come from ancient history, do they?
Not at all. Idioms draw heavily from the pillars of Western culture. Mythology gives us Achilles' heel, a fatal weakness, which references the Greek hero whose only vulnerable spot was his heel. You basically have to know the story of the Iliad to understand the reference.
And religion.
Christianity supplies phrases like Good Samaritan, which refers to a helpful, charitable person. That's a direct biblical reference.
And literature, too. Shakespeare is famous for coining phrases that are now everyday idioms, like wild goose chase, meaning a pointless, futile pursuit. If a learner hasn't been exposed to that literary tradition, they're effectively trying to decode a text written in invisible ink.
And this historical baggage creates huge gaps. Think about sports. We mentioned hit it out of the park. If you have zero cultural background in baseball, that phrase is meaningless.
Sure.
Whereas for an American, it instantly conjures up this image of success and excellence. Idioms really do reflect the values and dominant pastimes of the society that created them.
Which brings us to hurdle 3, regional variations and contextual drift. Language is a living thing. It's always shifting. And that creates problems when some idioms are dying out while new ones are being born every day.
That's the contextual drift. Textbooks can sometimes teach you these really outdated idioms. Our research mentioned 23 skidoo, which is this piece of early 20th century slang meaning get lost quickly.
Right. I've never heard that in my life.
Exactly. If a learner uses that today, they sound like they've stepped out of a time machine. Meanwhile, you have new idioms emerging from technology like ghost someone, which means abruptly cutting off all communication, usually in the context of dating apps. A learner has to be able to tell which phrases are current and relevant.
And then there's the chaos of regional variations. An advanced learner has to deal with not just English, but American English, British English, Australian English.
The differences are subtle, but they are so crucial. An American might say, knock on wood to ward off bad luck. A Brit will say, touch wood.
Same idea, different words.
Same core concept, distinct vocabulary, and then you get these highly specific regional phrases, you cited the Australian example, flat out like a lizard drinking.
Meaning extremely busy.
Which is an amazing image, but a person from the UK might have to pause and really process that image to figure out the meaning. It requires an awareness that English is not monolithic.
The other side of context is formality, or register. Using an idiom in the wrong situation can make you sound, well, awkward or even unprofessional.
Register is paramount. Some idioms are strictly colloquial, like shoot the breeze, which just means to have a casual chat. If you use that phrase in a formal academic presentation, it would be completely inappropriate.
Right.
The learner has to internalize not just the definition, but also the acceptable context, the time, the place, the audience, before they try to use the phrase. Missing that contextual cue is a dead giveaway of non-native speech, even if you know the definition perfectly.
Okay, this next hurdle, number 4, feels like the trickiest one for advanced learners. It's about word overlap and confusion, where common words are reused in deceptive ways, or idioms get confused with other things like phrasal verbs.
This requires real precision. We have to distinguish between these categories because they operate under different grammatical and functional rules. Let's start with word overlap. Familiar words become strange partners in idioms. Take hold your horses.
Simple words.
The words hold and horses are simple, but the meaning, to wait or be patient, is completely metaphorical. It comes from the physical act of restraining a team of horses on a carriage.
It's the familiarity of the words that makes it so confusing, because your brain tries to connect it to a literal horse. But let's get to that crucial distinction, separating idioms from phrasal verbs.
This is a point of constant confusion. A phrasal verb is a verb plus an adverb or preposition, which often changes the verb's meaning. Idioms are entire phrases whose meaning is completely non-literal and often structurally inflexible.
Okay, so let's use breakdown as our main example here.
Perfect. If I say the statistics break down into 5 categories, break down is a phrasal verb. It means to analyze or separate. The literal core of breaking something is still kind of there. But if I say he broke down when he heard the news, broke down is now functioning idiomatically. It means emotional collapse. The literal sense of breaking is totally gone.
Okay, that's a great distinction. What about catch up?
Same thing. As a phrasal verb, I need to catch up to the group running ahead. That means to reach them. As an idiom, let's catch up later. That means to exchange news or gossip. The functions are parallel but distinct, and it forces the learner to rely completely on context.
And then we also have to distinguish idioms from proverbs.
Yes, and this is vital for understanding rhetorical style. Idioms are mainly descriptive and expressive, I'm on cloud 9. Proverbs, like a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, are essentially pieces of advice. They're little philosophical statements.
So idioms describe a state or an action, but proverbs offer guidance.
Precisely. Proverbs often have this fixed sort of archaic structure and a clear universal lesson. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, advises caution. The meaning is relatively transparent, unlike kick the bucket, which requires, that cultural excavation we talked about.
Got it. Okay, and our final hurdle, number 5, pronunciation and listening obstacles. This is about the physical reality of spoken English.
Right. In the wild, in real conversation, idioms blend together, they contract, they rush past your ear, and that often defeats recognition even if you've memorized the phrase in writing.
So that smooth, predictable pace you get in a language classroom is just gone, replaced by the rapid fire of a native conversation.
Exactly. The phrase, it's a piece of cake in rapid speech becomes highly reduced. It sounds more like, it's a piece of cake.
It's a piece of cake.
Yeah. The distinct stresses often vanish. If a learner is only familiar with the written form, their brain just fails to recognize that sound pattern. And this is made even harder by things like elision, where sounds are dropped, or assimilation, where sounds merge.
And when you throw regional accents into the mix, the difficulty just compounds exponentially.
Without a doubt. A strong regional accent might alter the vowels or the stresses in a way that makes an idiom unrecognizable, even to another native speaker from a different region. So the learner needs really rigorous listening practice to develop an intuitive ear for these contractions and blends.
You noted the reverse problem, too, the stealthy nature of idioms in writing.
Correct. When you're reading an email or an article, idioms aren't usually put in italics or highlighted. They just appear invisibly, and you're expected to immediately recognize the phrase as non-literal and access the figurative meaning. That lack of a signal is a surprisingly big obstacle. It demands instant pattern recognition.
So to sum this all up, idioms require a blend of intuition, historical context, cultural sensitivity, advanced structural differentiation, and a highly tuned ear for rapid conversational speech. No big deal.
Right, simple stuff.
Okay, so since we've established that the sheer volume of over 25,000 idioms is just unmanageable, we now need to pivot to organization. You said categorization is the mental scaffolding that allows learners to build structure into this chaos.
It is. It's the only way to make it manageable.
Let's walk through the 5 main thematic categories from our material, focusing on the origins and the specific cultural challenges that each one presents.
Sounds good.
Okay, category A, animal idioms. These are so common, probably because animals are a universal part of the human experience. They lend themselves to really strong visual metaphors.
They do. Let's go back to let the cat out of the bag. This idiom is memorable because the origin story is such a vivid narrative. In Old English market fairs, you'd have dishonest merchants who might try to substitute a worthless cat for a valuable piglet, hiding it in a sack. If the buyer opened the bag, literally letting the cat out, the secret, the deception, was immediately revealed.
That immediately links a simple phrase to market history and deception. It's so much easier to remember that than just an entry on a list.
Definitely. Other animal idioms are more purely visual, like when pigs fly, something impossible. The image itself reinforces the meaning. Or hold your horses, which is a practical command coming directly from managing a horse-drawn carriage. It literally means wait or slow down.
The cultural challenge here, though, is how different cultures symbolize animals, right?
That is a critical point. For instance, in many Western cultures, the owl is a symbol of wisdom. But if a learner comes from a culture where the owl is associated with, say, foolishness or bad luck, an English phrase involving an owl could be completely misinterpreted.
So learning the idiom requires learning the Western cultural meaning of that animal symbol.
You got it. Okay, category B, food idioms. Food metaphors are incredibly common, usually relating to either ease, status, or financial reward.
Piece of cake has to be the most famous one for ease.
It is. The origin suggests that in old competitions or fair games, cake was often the prize, a relatively simple, desirable reward. So the phrase evolved to represent an easy accomplishment. We also touched on spill the beans, which connects back to that ancient Greek voting metaphor.
And what about bring home the bacon, implying financial success?
That phrase potentially comes from old traditions where a side of bacon was awarded as a prize for marital harmony, making it a tangible symbol of a successful, well-provided-for household. And here's one that requires a bit of science. Cool as a cucumber.
Okay.
That refers to the physiological fact that a cucumber's internal temperature stays lower than its external environment, making it a perfect metaphor for staying calm under pressure.
The cultural challenge here is food prestige.
Absolutely. If we call an important person the big cheese, it signifies status in English. But in a culture where cheese isn't considered a high-status food, that metaphor just falls completely flat. You have to understand the cultural hierarchy of different foods.
Next up, Category C body part idioms. The body provides such a powerful, visceral source for figurative language, but the strong literal meaning of the parts can make them really hard to override.
Indeed. Take cost an arm and a leg, meaning very expensive. The theory we discussed, that it's related to the cost of 18th century portrait painting, where including limbs in the portrait increased the price, is a useful mnemonic. It links the meaning back to value and loss.
What about the ones linked to improvisation?
Play it by ear. That means to improvise or proceed without a set plan. It's a direct lift from music, especially jazz, where a musician plays without sheet music. You're relying on your hearing and intuition, not a pre-written score.
Right.
Then you have simple ones like lend a hand for helping, and the historical inversion of head over heels, meaning deeply in love. It used to describe an accidental fall heels over head, but it evolved to describe the intoxicating confusion of being smitten.
The body map learning tip from the material is great for this category. Literally drawing the phrases onto a body map helps externalize the concept.
It transforms an abstract idea into a concrete visual location, which strengthens the memory link. Putting keep a straight face right next to the mouth and eyes on your drawing solidifies the physical expression of the idiom.
Okay, on to de-weather and nature idioms. Nature gives us these reliable metaphors for situations that feel powerful, uncontrollable, or emotional.
For sure. Beyond raining cats and dogs, which means heavy rain and has those obscure origins, what about reflecting mood?
Like under the weather.
Exactly. Under the weather, meaning sick or ill. This likely comes from nautical language. Sailors who felt unwell would sometimes be moved below deck, away from the turbulent weather. So they were literally under the influence of the weather. It's a mild, polite way to say you feel sick.
And the fascinating origin story of steal someone's thunder. I love this one.
This is one of the most specific and traceable origins out there. In 1709, a playwright named John Dennis invented a new way to create the sound of thunder for his own tragedy in London. His play failed, but another theater immediately copied his innovative sound effect. Dennis complained, saying, "They would not let my play succeed, and yet they steal my thunder." It just perfectly captures the idea of taking credit for someone else's invention.
The cultural gap here, particularly for advanced learners, can be the relationship with nature itself.
Exactly. If a learner is from a region where rain is rare, metaphors about torrential downpours might feel distant or abstract. A phrase like "a drop in the ocean" relies on the cultural concept of the ocean's vastness, which might be different for someone who lives inland. Watching weather reports is actually a great way to bridge that gap.
Finally, Category E sports and games idioms. This category feels highly dependent on shared cultural participation. If you don't know the rules of the game, the idiom is a complete puzzle.
It really is. Let's stick with the tennis example. The ball is in your court.
It's your turn to act.
Right, and it comes directly from the physical reality of the ball crossing the net in a game of tennis. Boxing is another rich source. Throw in the towel, where a boxer's corner signal surrender translates to giving up in a general sense. And saved by the bell refers to the bell ringing at the end of a round, rescuing an endangered fighter at the last second.
And since American English leans so heavily on baseball metaphors, we have to understand phrases like out of left field.
Baseball has positions named left, center, and right field. If something comes out of left field, it's unexpected or surprising, suggesting it came from a peripheral or unseen location. The challenge here is profound for a non-sporty learner. They just lack the visual, experiential context.
So the action plan is clear. If you are serious about English fluency, you need to understand the basic mechanics of sports like baseball, boxing, and tennis. Using sports highlights and commentary is essential for contextual practice.
We've established that idioms require intuition, not just definitions. So now let's pivot entirely to the actionable, step-by-step strategies you can use to build that intuition faster and make those 25,000 phrases feel manageable.
This is where we deliver the practical roadmap. We need to move from passive learning to aggressive acquisition.
And tip number 1 is immersion through English media. Nothing builds that intuitive recognition faster than sustained exposure to English as it's genuinely spoken. But passive watching is not enough. We need active engagement.
So what specific types of media are best for learning idioms?
You want to prioritize media that reflects daily life and casual conversation. While dramas are useful, sitcoms like Friends or The Office are absolute goldmines. They're dialogue-heavy and rely constantly on colloquial and idiomatic expressions.
And not just American shows, right?
Right. UK shows or even Australian soap operas provide excellent exposure to regional idioms. And for film, you mentioned Forrest Gump. Films often embed idioms as thematic statements. Life is like a box of chocolates is an idiom about life's unpredictability. When you hear that phrase repeated in the film's narrative, it solidifies the meaning way better than a dictionary ever could.
So what's the active part of the strategy? How does an advanced learner actually use this media?
Start with subtitles, ideally English subtitles. The moment you encounter a phrase that doesn't make literal sense, pause. Look it up. Use dedicated idiom resources like the Cambridge Dictionary or other specialized websites. And crucially, don't just read the definition, read the example sentences. Consistency is key here. Aim for at least 30 minutes of this active, focused immersion every single day. That repetition builds the neural pathways for instant recognition.
Okay, tip 2, build a personal idiom journal. Relying only on memory when you're facing thousands of phrases is just, well, it's futile. We need a system.
A personalized idiom journal, whether it's a physical notebook or a digital app like Anki, is non-negotiable. This tool transforms a passive list into an active, searchable repository that's customized to your own learning style.
And to really maximize retention, what are the 7 required components that every journal entry needs to have?
This is where the depth comes in. First, obviously, the phrase itself. Let's use bite the bullet. Second, the concise figurative meaning. Face a difficult situation bravely. Third, an example sentence you heard or read, like, I had to bite the bullet and finish the miserable report.
That's the core. What about the memory aids?
Fourth, the origin, if you can find it. For bite the bullet, it's soldiers biting bullets during surgery without anesthesia. That narrative context helps a ton. Fifth, you must create your own original sentence. This forces active creation. She bit the bullet and asked her strict professor for an extension. Sixth, a synonym or antonym. Synonym, toughed it out. Antonym, don't give up. And finally, 7th, a visual mnemonic. A quick sketch or just a mental image of someone bravely facing something unpleasant. That 7-part structure locks the phrase into your memory through multiple cognitive anchors.
Love that. Okay, tip 3, practice in context through conversations. Knowledge without application is useless.
Application is key to ownership.
Yeah.
You need to seek out low-stakes conversational environments. Join language exchanges on platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk. Find native English speakers for regular conversation practice.
And what's the specific challenge we should set for ourselves in those conversations?
Set a tangible goal. Successfully use 1 new idiom per day or per chat. Don't worry about being perfect. The point is just activation. You can also do role-playing scenarios. For instance, ask a practice partner. Describe your busiest day this week using 3 body part idioms. It forces integration.
And this practice also helps with prioritization, right?
Absolutely. When you're starting out, focus on the high-frequency phrases. Use online resources to find the top 100 or 500 most common idioms. Those are the ones you'll hear every day, like break the ice or call it a day. Reserve your energy. Don't waste time on a very rare or archaic idioms until you've mastered the essentials.
Tip 4 is mnemonics and visual aids. Since idioms defy logic, we need memory tricks that link the absurd literal words to the actual figurative meaning.
And visual absurdity is such a powerful mnemonic tool. Take the elephant in the room, an obvious issue everyone is ignoring. You should literally conjure up the image of a massive gray elephant sitting in your living room, crushing the furniture. The ridiculousness of that image instantly locks in the conceptual meaning of ignoring something huge and obvious.
And I love the suggestion of drawing simple comics for this.
Drawing is activation. Sketching, kick the bucket, as a cartoon ghost sending a pail flying, works because it makes the literal words interact with the figurative outcome. And always try to link the English idiom back to its closest parallel in your native language, even if the literal translation is different.
Tip 5. Learn in chunks, not all at once. The main enemy of the idiom learner is just feeling overwhelmed. How do we structure the learning to prevent burnout?
By enforcing a methodical chunking strategy, instead of randomly studying a list, dedicate specific organized periods to those thematic categories we talked about. Week 1 is just animal idioms. Week 2, you move on to food idioms, focusing on the cultural context of that group. This compartmentalization prevents confusion and helps your brain build connections within that theme.
That structure seems far more efficient than just random drilling.
It capitalizes on pattern recognition. When you learn cool as a cucumber alongside bring home the bacon, your brain immediately groups them under the food metaphor category. This makes retrieval so much easier later on.
Tip 6. Understand regional differences. As we've discussed, English is a global language. An idiom used in London might be totally different or even non-existent in New York or Sydney.
Recognizing this regional variation is a sign of advanced awareness. For instance, Americans might say, "A great job, knocked their socks off,"
Impress them.
while a British speaker might say they were chuffed to bits.
Very pleased.
Both express high satisfaction, but one is tied to American hyperbole, the other to British understated praise.
So how do you practically absorb these regional nuances?
You have to target your media consumption. If your goal is to master U.S. English for business, consume U.S.-centric news and films. If you're preparing for a trip to Australia, start watching Australian content. This contextualizes the idioms within the accent, the speed, and the unique culture of that region.
Okay, tip 7. Avoid common pitfalls. Even advanced learners fall into predictable traps when they try to use idioms. We need to explicitly list these errors so they can be consciously avoided.
First and foremost, never, under any circumstances, translate literally. The figurative meaning is the only meaning. Second, do not overuse them. Native speakers use idioms judiciously. Forcing an idiom into every sentence makes your speech sound artificial and awkward.
And what if you're speaking and you realize you might have used an idiom incorrectly or the listener looks confused?
Just ask for clarification. Saying, "I think I used that idiom wrong. What does flat out like a lizard drinking mean to you?" shows diligence and eagerness. It's much better to confirm than to unintentionally confuse your listener. And finally, ignore the very rare idioms at first. Focus your energy on the expressions that will give you the most benefit in daily communication.
And our last tip. Tip 8. Leverage technology. We have to use modern tools that have been developed specifically for this linguistic challenge.
Technology provides personalized repetition and contextual presentation. Apps like Duolingo often incorporate idiom lessons. FluentU is fantastic because it uses native video clips, real-world content to present idioms in context. You can pause, check the definition, and see it used by a native speaker.
What about using AI or browser extensions?
AI tools are now incredibly powerful for this. You can chat with an AI language partner and specifically instruct it. Use 3 sports idioms in your next response and explain their meanings. This generates customized, contextual practice. Browser extensions that highlight potential idioms on web pages are also useful, forcing you to acknowledge the non-literal phrasing as you read.
Okay, let's put some of these strategies into immediate practice. These exercises are designed to build confidence and reinforce the categories and distinctions we've been discussing.
Let's do a quiz. We'll use the theme of money and value. I'll list 4 idioms and you match them to their meanings. Ready?
Ready.
Number 1, burn bridges. 2, cost a pretty penny. 3, a penny for your thoughts. And 4, cheap as chips.
And the meanings are A, be very cheap. B, destroy relationships. C, be expensive. And D, what's on your mind?
Take a second to think about the meanings and the origin stories we discussed.
All right, let's reveal the matches. Burn bridges matches with B, destroy relationships. We noted its origin in military tactics, eliminating any option for retreat.
Correct. Cost a pretty penny is C, be expensive. The term pretty penny refers to coins that were historically valued highly for their appearance. A penny for your thoughts is D, meaning to ask what someone is thinking. And finally, cheap as chips is A, very cheap, reflecting the affordability of, well, chips.
Perfect. Now for a quick fill-in-the-blank exercise to test immediate recall in context.
I'm feeling blank the weather today.
That test was a blank of cake.
Don't count your chickens before they blank.
Okay, for the first sentence, the word is under. I'm feeling under the weather today, referencing that nautical origin of feeling unwell.
For sentence 2, it's peace. That test was a piece of cake illustrating ease.
And the third one is crucial because it's a proverb. The word is hatch. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. This is a great example of distinguishing between a pure idiom and a proverb. This phrase offers a moral lesson of caution and foresight, reinforcing that lesson from Hurdle 4.
All right, quiz 2. Origins challenge. What does the whole 9 yards mean, and why is its origin so fascinatingly debated?
The meaning is everything possible or everything available. And the reason its origin is so debated is that it points to multiple different cultural sources, not just one clear story. Some theories link it to the length of ammunition belts in WWI fighter planes.
A whole 9 yards of ammo?
Right. Others link it to the amount of fabric needed to make a specific type of suit, or maybe even a reference to a sailing ship's rigging. The point is the concept is universal, getting all of something, but the source material reflects all these diverse historical references.
And finally, exercise 2, story writing encouragement. We want you to follow that strategy of personalized, active creation.
That means writing a short story using 10 idioms. Force yourself to integrate them naturally, don't just make a list.
Absolutely. Start with a narrative hook. I was on cloud 9 when I got the job, but the commute immediately threw me for a loop. I realized the office was miles away, and getting there would cost an arm and a leg. I knew I had to bite the bullet. That active use is the final step toward true mastery and moving those idioms from your journal into your intuitive linguistic skill set. So we have spent a lot of time dismantling why English idioms can act as these sneaky linguistic saboteurs, but we've also seen why they make English such a vibrant, colorful, and efficient language. Remember, fluency is a marathon. Every single native speaker learned these expressions through constant context, trial, and yes, error. The key for you is methodical patience and relentless persistence.
Indeed. Idioms are really the final frontier of fluency because they're so much more than just vocabulary. They're cultural touchstones reflecting history, shared knowledge, and social agreement. Mastering them means transcending the mechanics of the language and achieving a nuanced native-level understanding. And if you slick up occasionally, just remember the comforting idiom. It's no skin off your nose.
Meaning no harm done, and you just move on.
Exactly.
And we want to leave you with one final provocative thought that builds on our discussion of linguistic evolution. We mentioned Rome wasn't built in a day, which reminds us that great things take time. But language is always changing. Given that new idioms emerge and old ones fade, like 23 skidoo, what single common idiom in English today do you predict will eventually become outdated slang or completely obsolete in the next 20 years? Start tracking language evolution in real time.
That's a fascinating challenge. It requires you to think about future cultural shifts and technological changes. Happy idiom hunting, and remember to keep your chin up.
If you found this deep dive helpful and feel like you are now on the ball with these strategies, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more advanced listening practice. We'll catch you next time.